This is Christopher John Björkness. It is December 10th, 2024. Very many people have contacted me, urging me, some of them desperately urging me to make some more of my videos exposing what's going on in the world, because I'm the only person who knows what's really happening and can explain and expose it, as I've been doing now for 20 years. I warned you, mother lovers. I told you exactly this would come about. In 2006, I went all over the internet. I did every interview I could grab to wave the flags of alarm that Israel and Jewry in general were setting about to fulfill their apocalyptic messianic prophecies, that they did not treat them as real prophecies to be fulfilled by their gods, but instead as the plans of their ancestors that they were going to fulfill on the schedule set by their ancestors. I specifically told you that they would set about to exterminate the Amalekites, that they viewed the Palestinians as Amalekites, that they would attempt to exterminate the people of Gaza and Lebanon, and then move on to the woe of Damascus from Isaiah 17:1. I was writing about that in 2006. I was talking about that all over internet radio. I wrote 2 books about all of this: The Manufacture and Sale of St. Einstein and The Jewish Genocide of Armenian Christians, which I put on the internet as PDF files for free. I've been making videos, doing interviews, publishing articles for these past 20 years, exposing all of these facts. My work has been heavily suppressed. There's been a nonstop smear campaign to try to defame me. Many grifters rip off my work and put it to evil purposes. And I was about to end all of this work, but these desperate pleas have convinced me that since I'm the only person in the world who can do this, I have a moral obligation to do it. I have written a book that I'm going to be releasing soon that has a number of solutions that we can pursue. I've been providing solutions the whole way through this quest. And again, in 2006, I warned exactly what was coming. I told you that they wanted to anoint their king to be king of the world and to rule the world from Jerusalem. I warned you that they want to construct the third temple, that they were going to exterminate the Amalekites, being the Palestinians and the Armenians. I talked about the fact that Turkey was going to invade and overtake Syria for the benefit of Israel. I explained the whole history of the crypto-Jewish conspiracy to create the Pan-Turkic movement, from the Hungarians to the Finns to the Turks to Turkmenistan to the Uyghurs in China, and create a vast empire spanning Eurasia into Europe, just as the Turkic peoples have been doing for 2,000 years. When the Khazars moved in and started to attack the Armenians, and we had the Huns and all kinds of Mongols and other peoples moving in from the steppes to attack. The Khazars converted to Judaism sometime between 600 and 800. I documented all of that. I've been providing all this information for free this whole time. If you'd like to contribute to my work, you can do so at my website, cjbbooks.com, where you can find these books I'm discussing. I'm going to use them as a primary reference in this talk because they are so very useful, and because I did predict exactly what was coming and exactly what is happening. I predicted that they would try to constitute this crypto-Jewish inspired Pan-Turkic empire. And we'll go through all of that and how it applies to Syria and what is going on today. And one of the things that I've been exposing for a very long time, I talked about it with Reverend Bedros Hajian in 2008. I discussed it in my blog articles and videos from 2006 onwards. I made a big emphasis of explaining it when the staged Mavi Marmara attack happened, and the Israelis slaughtered a couple of Kurdish Mossad agents. What that's all about is making Erdogan the new head of the Pan-Turkic army and creating a new caliph in the Ottoman Empire. It spread across and controlled the Arabian peoples, and he was the head of Islam and controlled the Ummah, the Muslim community. And the Sultan of Turkey was a very powerful figure, and he was a clerical and profane figure, like the double-headed eagle. He controlled both the state and Islam, the church, effectively. And I predicted that that would come back, and Erdogan would try to lead that, and that one of the things that they would try to do is first they would have a war between Messiah, son of Joseph, who is played by Benjamin Netanyahu, and King Shiroi of Persia. In 2006, it was Ahmadinejad, and that has transferred over the years to very many different people. And I told you that there would be a 9-month tribulation period, the birth pangs of the Messiah, Chevlei Mashiach, as it's called. And that these 9 months, I told you, would commence in April of 2024 and end when Donald Trump is inaugurated in January of 2025. And I explicitly gave those dates. I told you exactly what would happen. I told you that Netanyahu would try to slaughter the Palestinians, would attack Lebanon, and would kill the king of Tyre, Hassan Nasrallah, who is described as Satan in Ezekiel chapter 7 and 28. I explained all that in 2006, and then I gave you the specific dates and names very much earlier this year, and I've been discussing it for the past several years. So I'm the guy who's done all this. The alternative media has been ripping me off for 20 years, parroting my lines verbatim over and over again, as Adam Green does consistently. But I was the one who created all this knowledge and dispensed all this knowledge. So we're going to go through that. And what I want you to learn primarily from this presentation is that Erdogan is to replace the Iranians as the leader of the Muslims in the Middle East. That is scripted to fulfill these prophecies that there would be a Messiah, son of Joseph, a Messiah anointed for war, Benjamin Netanyahu, and that he would engage in a 9-month battle with Persia, with Iran. He might be killed in this battle. I told you about that 20 years ago, and they tried to bomb Netanyahu's house in fulfillment of these prophecies through Hezbollah, through the proxies of Iran, through the king of Tyre, as in Ezekiel chapters 27 and 28, as in Satan himself, he is described as. So this has all now happened. All these things that I forecast 20 years ago have occurred. And I also forecast and explained in 2006 in my interviews and books and blog articles that the Christian evangelicals, and long before them, Protestants and Catholics, had been preaching the idea that Russia represented Gog and Magog, and that Tsar and his successors as the heads of the Soviet Union, and now Mr. Putin, represent Gog and Magog. But Turkey is also a big part of that, as I explained, and Persia is also mentioned in those supposed prophecies, which are actually taken to be plans in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. So we are now in the worst phase The inauguration is about to happen. The culmination of the war between Messiah, son of David, and King Shiroi of Persia is about to be fulfilled and completed. Donald Trump will be inaugurated, and we now enter the phase where this power is being transferred from Iran to Turkey. And Turkey will play the role of part of the Behemoth forces against the Leviathan Atlanticist forces of America and the UK, together with Putin and China. But this has to evolve into the Behemoth. The Behemoth is the Eurasianist forces. There was a man named Pan-Turkic in Turkey who was a Marxist and who was in cahoots with Alexander Dugin to subvert Turkey and draw it out of NATO and bring it into the fold of the Behemoth powers. And Erdogan and Putin became very close, and they started getting Russian weapons and making deals with the Russians and screwing over NATO. And Erdogan was very clever the way he played things in terms of Finland and Sweden joining NATO. He leveraged it for everything he can get. He is the most double-dealing, backstabbing con artist on the world stage, but all these players are ultimately controlled by the same people. They're all working to fulfill the Jewish apocalyptic messianic prophecies, to anoint the king, to kill off the Amalekites. The worst of the Amalekites are the European so-called Edomites, who are supposedly the descendants of the Romans who destroyed the temple in Rome. The Old Testament is filled with prophecies against the Edomites, completely exterminating them. The worst of the Edomites are the Amalekites. They are the densest shell of the Kelipot, the shattered shards of the shattered seven lower Sephirot, the vessels of chaos. They are the densest, hardest, most dangerous ones, but they are also the most protective because they form the protective shell around Israel. And that is why the UK and the United States, the Atlanticists, the serpent of the Leviathan, are protecting Israel. But the war against Persia is meant to destroy America and the UK, the Atlanticists, for the benefit of the war of Gog and Magog, which will be played by the Eurasianists, including the Turks, the Pan-Turkic Empire, which has Hungary with Orban. I mean, they're playing it out to the letter, exactly what the prophecies call for. So Orban pretends to be Turkish. He's a staunch Zionist. He stood up for Israel and Netanyahu consistently, as did all his Hungarian Putinist-Vatnik predecessors, going back to Jobnik and whatever the hell it was before all this. And it turned out they were all crypto Jews, and many of them went from Hungary to Israel. So they're going to be part of this Pan-Turkic empire. And we see the Uyghur Mujahideen among the forces that Erdogan sent in to Syria, and they have a battle with the Red Chinese. So very often in world wars and the way things play out, allies eventually end up as enemies. Hitler and Stalin were allies to divide Poland, and then they played the role of enemies so that Stalin could take over all of Eastern Europe and part of Eastern Germany, treading on Hitler's heels, as was the plan from the beginning. And as our friend Edvard Beneš predicted in 1938 as president of Czechoslovakia, and looked forward to having Russians, communists, as his neighbors, because he knew the whole thing was a setup and that Hitler would bring the Soviets to his doorstep, which he wanted. He looked forward to. So these games are being played over and over again, just like in the Maidan, when the president of Ukraine just walked away very happily to Russia and let the West have the Ukraine. We now have Assad, who was, of course, always working for Israel and for Russia, who just walked away very happily to Moscow. The same exact thing that happened in Ukraine. This is all being staged. The Russians play a huge part in it. Assad played a huge part in it, as I explained in 2006, and very frequently ever since. The House of Saud are crypto Jews. I specifically said that repeatedly in 2006 and many, many times since. All of the Middle Eastern countries are subverted by the Israelis and play their role, their scripted role, in fulfilling these apocalyptic messianic prophecies of the Jews. Egypt is the same. I was predicting the Arab Spring in 2006, long before it happened. I named the countries where it would happen. I named the dates when it would happen. And I told you specifically how it would unfold, and it happened exactly that way, just as events today are happening exactly as I told you in 2006. They would try to exterminate the Palestinians in Gaza, who represent the Philistines in Philistia, and they would try to wipe out the southern Lebanese and the Lebanese in general as the king of Tyre, as the Battle of Sidon, all of these in fulfillment of their prophecies. You can look at my old videos and see that what I'm telling you is exactly true. I posted many of them on Twitter. YouTube has taken down at least 2 of those videos, so you're better off looking at Odysee or BitChute or Twitter for those videos. I've recently been posting many of the interviews I did in 2006, where I laid all this out all the way back then. So again, what's happening now is we have the war between Israel and Persia that was planned out in Sefer Zerubbabel, and the prayer of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the Zohar, in several Jewish apocalypses, Avkat Rochel. All of these Jewish apocalypses I've been exposing for 20 years and laying out the names and the pattern that this war will take. It is now coming to an end. This 9-month period will come to an end with the inauguration of Trump in January. I think it's the 20th of 2025. Then the real shit happens. Then we get into the battle of Gog and Magog. And in Ezekiel 38 and 39, it lists these countries. Turkey and Russia are thought to play big roles in that. Subsequent prophecies by the Gaon of Vilna involve the Ottoman Empire and its collapse, and the fact that when it collapsed, that would be the beginnings of this new age that would bring about the Messiah. So all of this has been planned out, scripted, and they are following that script to the letter. As I was saying in 2006, a big part of this is building the greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates, from Genesis 15:18. I told you that that's exactly what they were doing. I explained the background of that, and I told you that part of that process would be sacrificing the firstborn, the worst of the firstborn. All the Gentiles are the firstborn. They are Esau, the firstborn twin out of the womb. The Jews are Jacob. I described all of that in 2006. And I told you that the Europeans are considered Esau, and the Edomites, and most especially the Christians, are considered Esau and the Edomites, and have to be completely exterminated in this battle of Gog and Magog, which was reframed in the Midrash, as I've explained, as the war between the Leviathan and the Behemoth, the Leviathan being the Christians, the Behemoth being the Muslims and the Marxists. So what's going to happen now is instead of Iran leading the fake war against Israel and losing miserably, they're going to bring down the U.S. in all these Middle Eastern wars, culminating in the war with Iran and eventually Turkey, as I've been sounding the alarm about, as I said, for 20 years, 30 years, really. And they're going to transition. This is the transition period as we reach the end of the birth pangs of the Mashiach, and we get Trump inaugurated, then it gets hardcore. Then it becomes setting up the Battle of Gog and Magog. And that may take some time, but it involves creating this Pan-Turkic empire from Hungary up to Finland potentially, through Turkey, uniting Turkey and Azerbaijan, biting off at least the Sihanouk province of southern Armenia, parts of Iran, and perhaps all of Armenia, and uniting Azerbaijan and Turkey, and then going through across the Caspian Sea to the Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, all the way to the Uyghurs in China, and to unite that as a force to become the new caliph. And this whole concept of Pan-Turkey was created by two crypto Jews. One of them was named Arminius van Berry. That was his fake name. His real name was Herman Bamberg. The other one was named Moritz Cohen. He changed his name to, I think, Munis Taken Elp. That was common in the Ottoman Empire. The Young Turks were mostly crypto-Jewish Freemasons of the Dern-May sect from Shabbatai Tsevi. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the Jewish father of the Turks, Ataturk means father of the Turks, said that he was descended from this Shabbatai Tsevi, whose descendants, through Osman Baba, Baruchya Russo, created the Dern-May, who have run Turkey ever since. And they are absolutely in league with the Israelis. It was always a Zionist movement. Shabbatai Tsevi wanted to take Palestine from the Ottoman Turks and make it into a Jewish state in fulfillment of these Jewish messianic prophecies. And they've been setting it up ever since. They took over the Sultanate in 1908 through 1909 with the so-called Young Turk Revolution. As I explained in my book, the Jewish genocide of Armenian Christians in 2006. And this led up to Kemal Ataturk. And the idea of the Pan-Turk movement originally was to convince the Turks to give up Palestine because Palestinians aren't Turks and it belonged to the Jews, and that they should become more secular, and that their real goal should be to create this Pan-Turkic empire from Hungary to the Uyghurs of China. And that enabled Kemal Ataturk after World War I and the Ottoman Empire was destroyed and disassembled to create this Turkish secular nationalism and to voluntarily give up his caliphate and surrender Palestine to Israel without any Muslim opposition. And this has now resulted in the Pan-Turkic movement, which again wants to exterminate the Armenians because Armenians are considered Amalekites. When the Jews took over Palestine, the Talmud in Tractate Sanhedrin, Folio 20b, commanded them to do three things. They had to exterminate the Amalekites, anoint their king, and build the third temple. So killing off the Armenians in the Armenian Genocide was the fulfillment of that. And now they got to take over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem and build their third temple. As I told you would happen, they have now flanked the Hezbollah, not only on southern Lebanon, but now on their eastern flank. They have taken over all of the Golan Heights and are extending that towards Damascus so that they have the complete eastern flank, and for them, their western flank, attacking Hezbollah. Hezbollah is now cut off on the supply line from Syria, from Iran. So Hezbollah is going to be flushed down the toilet. Iran is now tremendously weakened. People think that Russia had no idea this was coming, but Russia was absolutely a part of this and has been a part of this. As I said from the beginning, they were sent in to help grind up Syria. The Young Turks describe this process as kneading bread. You knead bread, you pull it, you stretch it, you beat it, you pound it, and then you bake it. And That's what they've done to Syria. I told you that's what they would do. In 2012, I was warning the Armenians that there would be a bloodbath in Aleppo, which followed on the heels of my warnings. I warned them that they were going to lose Artsakh if no peace was arrived at, and tragically that's happened, and they're in extreme danger from this Pan-Turkic movement. These guys call themselves the Gray Wolves, like the wolves of the steppes, like the Mongols and Turks that have been coming in waves century after thousands of years, going all the way back to 198 when the Turks first began to attack the Armenians and encroach on their territory. So that's what's going on in Syria. We have a reconstitution of the Ottoman Empire on Pan-Turkic principles, and it's going to be a switch from the Iranians playing the controlled and the Shiite Muslims playing the controlled opposition to the Jews in Israel and the construction of the temple and the rise of al-Dajjal to now Erdogan. And we're going from the battle of Messiah, son of Joseph, against Persia into the battle of Gog and Magog, of Leviathan and Behemoth fighting one another. So this 9-month tribulation period is coming to an end, and now it has to, the shit has to get really serious, and we have to start setting up the battle of Gog and Magog, and we have to solidify the powers of the Leviathan against the powers of the Eurasianist Behemoth. And we need this Pan-Turkic empire to form. It may have conflicts with China that are staged. It may have conflicts with Russia that are staged. But this is also part of that Marxist plan of permanent war and permanent revolution that consolidates all of these independent empires into an international communist globalist state. And that's what they're setting up right now, as I anticipated they would. And they're going to control all of the energy. And one of the reasons that the Russians got involved in Syria was to keep a pipeline running from Qatar up to Turkey and then over across into Europe. And that can now proceed if they want to do it. But they're constantly setting it up so that Europe and America is dependent upon oil that they can cut off. And one of the reasons that Russia was involved in Iran was to inhibit the size of its natural gas pipes and its delivery of oil to the West. Russia has always promoted conflict between Iran and the U.S. Russia was involved in the Islamic Revolution very heavily. Russia was involved very heavily in the war between Iraq and Iran. They want Iran to fail so that this oil is not cheap, and so that Russian oil and natural gas are much more expensive on the international market. They do the same stuff in Venezuela. They want Venezuela with its crypto-Jewish, Sephardo-Jewish leader Maduro, and before him, the communist Chavez with his red shirts. They want them by perpetual war with the West so that the price of Russian oil goes up. The Russians have always been subverting the Armenians, subverting all of the Muslim nations together with Turkey. They have always been working together. They worked together right during and after World War I through a series of treaties to screw over the Armenians. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was involved in the Bolsheviks taking over the First Republic of Armenia. This has always been going on ever since the Bolsheviks took over Russia. Prior to that, Turkey and Russia were pitted against one another by the British, by Disraeli, by several other forces. The French were involved in pitting them against one another. Again, all this was a fight to free up the Jews of Russia so that they could send them to Palestine and to free up Palestine from the Ottoman Empire so that the Jews could take it over. And this staged conflict between Russians and Turks and this very carefully hidden collusion between Russians and Turks is not for the benefit of Russians. It's not for the benefit of Turks. It's not for the benefit of Middle Eastern Muslims or Middle Eastern Christians. It has always been to their detriment deliberately and always for the benefit of the people who want to fulfill these Jewish messianic prophecies, both Christian Zionists and Jews. So let's have a look at some of the things that I was writing about back in 2006, because I have some things to say about all that. So where do I want to get there? So this is my book, The Manufacture and Sale of St. Einstein, which I put on the internet for free in 2005 and then made some minor updates in 2006 and re-released and put it for free on my website for people to download. It's been tremendously influential. I've seen people ripping off information from me for 2 decades. I've seen whole chunks of what I wrote appear on Wikipedia and in books and in articles without any attribution. I created all kinds of new knowledge that has filtered out and disseminated throughout the world ever since. It's been a tremendously influential book. So let's look for Greater Israel in my book and see what comes up. And people are pretending that this is something new that they discovered. We've known about Greater Israel for a very long time. It's part of the Bible in Genesis chapter 15, verse 18. It's a covenant with Abraham. And so in 2006, I was talking about the genocidal Jewish messianic myths guiding the actions of the leading Zionists like Ben-Gurion and Begin remain troubling today because they predict an apocalyptic war between the Messiah, son of Joseph, in a secular view, the state of Israel, and the king of Persia, president of Iran, which, after a 9-month period of tribulations for Israel, and the Messiah, death of the Messiah, son of Joseph, and remember, they tried to bomb Netanyahu in his home, will result in the ascendance of Messiah, son of David. That's the real king of the Jews. The Messiah, son of Joseph, is supposed to set up the wars to destroy the Amalekites, so that the Messiah, and the Amalekites means all Gentiles ultimately, so that the Messiah, son of David, can be a king of peace and live in peace in a world without Gentiles. In a secular view, the state of Greater Israel extending from the Nile to the Euphrates, and the subjugation and extermination of the Gentile peoples of the earth. The Lubavitcher Jews have announced that they are prepared to anoint the Messiah and that it will soon happen. They are broadly disseminating propaganda to condition the world to accept this event. Unlike a lot of people who rip off my work, I was talking about the Lubavitcher Jews back in 2006. United States has literally fought for Israel to obtain its goal of hegemony in the Middle East and a Greater Israel, whose borders will extend from the Nile to the Euphrates. Many American lives have been sacrificed to Israel. One of the early instances of human sacrifice in the history of the Hebrews, God asked Abraham to make a burnt offering of his only and beloved son to God as a human sacrifice. This reveals that Judaism is an outgrowth of Canaanite Baal worship. Many of the things I've discussed subsequently in my book, Beware the World to Come, I had already completely figured out in 2006, the vast majority of it. That relates to the firstborn child, Jesus, in the Old Testament, et cetera, et cetera. story of the murder of the firstborn of Egypt is the story of a Canaanite sacrifice to Baal made as an offering for the land of greater Israel. Muslims believe that they inherited God's covenant from Abraham through Abraham's firstborn child, Ishmael. Now, the importance of this is that part of this greater Israel project, the fulfillment of this covenant, is they have to fulfill the mitzvot, the 3 commandments out of the 613, commanding them to exterminate the Amalekites. That means they got to kill every one of us. They got to make sure our DNA does not persist. They have to ensure that all our offspring are killed, so that even our animals are killed. All our property is destroyed. They have to completely obliterate our memory from existence. And I was screaming about this in 2006 and every day since. You people have to realize their goal is to eliminate us from existence, to blot out our memory so that it is as if we had never existed. And they are well on their way. And this is the damnable phase we are about to enter, where we transition from the war of the Chevlei Mashiach against Persia into the battle of Gog and Magog. And that is why this is such a desperate time. And I hope you people finally start to listen to what I'm telling you, that they are setting up to exterminate us. This is not a game. They are not all powerful. We can stop them. But to stop them, you have to stop stepping into all of their mousetraps. And I have a book coming up where I hope I can inspire people to take this seriously and take the steps necessary to save us. And if we can't save the masses, we at least have to save a core of our people. And we have to, well, I'll get into that later. But I'm trying to inspire you to understand that I had this figured out in 2006 and told you exactly what to expect, and it's happening. So my model works. My predictive model works. So please pay attention to my warnings. They are going from the war against Persia to the war against Persia and all of the Eurasianist forces of Gog and Magog against the Leviathan, and that spells death for everyone. All right, so as I was saying in 2006, I was quoting Deuteronomy 25:15, which I tried to bring to the attention very strongly of the Armenians, because that's what led to the Armenian Genocide. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest from all thine enemies round about in the land in which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Thou shalt not forget it. That's why they're killing the Palestinians. That's why they're poisoning our food. That's why they're turning the entire world against America, is to kill off the European peoples who are the ultimate expression of Amalek, and then all the rest of humanity. Should the Zionists continue in their attempts to carry out their ancient plans, we can expect that when Israel gains hegemony in the Middle East, it will seek to exterminate the peoples of European descent. Zionists are clearly attempting to destroy the militaries of those Muslim nations which would react with rage and which would likely attack Israel. Right now, they are destroying completely all the military equipment, the Navy, the Air Force, the small arms, the artillery, the tanks of Syria. I told you this was coming. When the Kabbalistic Jews and their Christian dispensationalist slaves destroy the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, as they're about to do, and build in their place a Jewish temple, should Israel succeed in destroying Iran and Syria, they will likely destroy the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's coming real soon. And the Muslim world will be unable to stop them. They will then unleash the priests of Aaron and reinstitute ritual sacrifices. Greater Israel will emerge and occupy the territory from the Nile to the Euphrates. The Zionists will generate anti-Semitism around the world in order to force racial Jews to emigrate to Israel. Anti-Semitism is being artificially fomented around the world, and there was recently a Sanhedrin calling for all racial Jews to emigrate to Israel. I was telling you this stuff in 2006, and no one would listen and no one would help. Who will then populate the greater Israel of the covenant? Then the Jewish king, perhaps a descendant of the Rothschilds, will emerge, and many Jews will likely take up Judaism. I was always warning that Jews would become more bold and more aggressive and more outspoken as the Messiah approaches, and I knew that because that's what their prophecies say. The Messiah will be a dynasty passing from father to son, or the supposed incarnation from one man to the next in the Shabbatayan style, much like the Dalai Lama. See 2 Samuel chapter 7. Perhaps the proposed Jewish king is alive, hidden from view. The Lubavitchers, under the leadership of the now deceased Rebbe Schneerson, have declared that the Messiah is alive today and will soon be anointed. That is a very bad thing. That spells the doom of all of humanity. They are an immensely powerful Kabbalistic Jewish sect which has infiltrated governments around the world. I was exposing this in 2006. We can expect that Soviet-style oppression will grip the West, as it certainly has. One already sees that news organizations restrict the international news Americans see, much has happened in the Soviet Union. China will likely become the new America for the Zionists. I always predicted the rise of the Chinese. I was warning about that in the mid-90s. I was warning about Armand Hammer's protege, Al Gore, giving our nuclear secrets to the Chinese so that they could build nuclear bombs to exterminate us with. And their iron scepter, that nuclear iron scepter and military of China that the Jews built up, which Israel will utilize to smash the West, which will have plunged into deep depression and an international police state. Racist Jews who view themselves as Orientals will then enslave the rest of humanity, and through laws mandating miscegenation, dilute the blood of Esau. That has been the process of mass immigration into Europe, America, Australia, all of the Canada, all of the historically European nations. I predicted all that. I warned about that, and I explained the reasons, the religious reasons for that, which no one else did. Then they will likely break up Israel into classes where Ashkenazi Jews reign over Sephardic and Coptic Jews, a process which is already well underway. Those who doubt it are invited to consider what happened to Germany and Russia at the hands of Jewish financiers, and to further consider the precarious economic condition of the United States as a result of the organized efforts of Zionists to undermine the sovereignty of America, its moral and educational strengths, and to export its industries. I was warning about the exportation of American industry to China from the early 90s. I was screaming about that on the internet, and they mischaracterized me as if I were racist for doing that, to try to shut me up. The Jewish state, on the other hand, does not yet occupy Greater Israel, the territory from the Nile to the Euphrates. Many Jews have designs on that territory and go so far as to claim that the sorrowful events which befall Israelis today are God's punishment for the Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. They cite Jewish religious writings which they believe command the Jews to never surrender any Jewish territory. And they're not supposed to allow any Gentiles in Jerusalem and even in all of Greater Israel, which means the extermination of all the Gentiles in the Middle East. Firstborn of Egypt are sacrificed to Baal in the pursuit of Zionism of Greater Israel. And I've developed my theory much more fully in my later books, but but I had it all sussed out and hashed out in 2006, and I was screaming about it all over the world. To this day, the Zionists want to force all Gentiles, and especially Palestinians, out of Jerusalem. Those that call to remove all Gentiles from Jerusalem is found in Isaiah 52:1 and Joel 3:17, and even out of Israel and greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates. They follow the ancient law of the halacha that only Jews and Judaism be permitted in the Holy Land, while hypocritically insisting that Jews be permitted religious freedom, be permitted citizenship, and be enfranchised in all other lands. This book is loaded with very valuable quotations and citations and notations. I prove everything I say expressly in irrefutable ways. Now, another one of the things that I meant to discuss in this talk, they always believed that the opposition to the Messiah would come from Damascus and would be a reincarnation of the soul of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. These battles that are happening in Syria are the artificial fulfillment of Daniel chapter 11. And I think it's the fourth king, Epiphanes IV, the fourth Seleucid king, represents to them their Antichrist, their world figure, their Armilus, whatever the hell you want to call them, who is going to oppose their Messiah. And they always feared that this figure would come out of Damascus. So they had this prophecy of the woe of Damascus in Isaiah 17:1, as I explained in 2006 and repeatedly ever since. This woe of Damascus was coming. I tried to get people to help me to stop it from coming. I warned you about all the idiots working for Russia and Israel to convince you that figures like Putin and Assad and Xi Jinping are your saviors. In 2006, I explained the concept of utilizing the foreign savior like Jesus Christ, who is actually your enemy, and teaching you that your enemy is your savior. And how did Jesus save you? He saved you by killing you. You become immortal by dying, by martyring yourself, by bearing your cross. And they've got all these idiots convinced, all these mega morons, and all the libertarian crypto communists, and all the jackasses who rip off my work and babble all over the internet have convinced people that our enemies are instead our saviors, that Putin's somehow a good guy, that Assad, this mass murderer, torturer, dictator, was somehow a good guy, that Xi Jinping, the head of communist China, is going to free us. And the stupidest, most gullible jackasses in the world lap this stuff up that they're being spoon-fed by these obvious enemies of our agents, of our enemies. And I can't break through. I can't convince people that you're being set up to be exterminated. Stop being so stupid and gullible. Look at the facts. Look at the agenda of these people. Look at what the Bolsheviks did to the Russian people. That's coming for us in spades. Nuclear war is coming for us, and you're cheering on the ones who have the bombs that are going to kill us. Oh, it really bites my ass that people are so stupid and I have to suffer for their stupidity. The entire story appears to be a canard meant to artificially fulfill prophecies and may simply be a repetition of the story of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who was also said to be mad and who also desecrated the temple with a statue of a foreign god, Zeus, and who had pigs sacrificed at the altar of the temple, which he converted to the worship of Zeus. First Maccabees, chapter 1, verses 20 to 24, 54 to 64. Diodorus, the Greek historian, also described all of this. Antiochus IV Epiphanes was said to be the first line of what Christians call the Antichrist. And Jews fear that another anti-Messiah will arise in Syria, Daniel chapter 11, which may well explain why the neoconservative Jews in America are pushing America towards war with Syria. Another obvious reason being their desire for a greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates, and perhaps most ominously, Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1 states, and this is the woe of Damascus that I keep talking about over and over again for the past 20 years. The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. Some doubt whether the temple was actually at the site of the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, etc., etc. Beyond this, Jewish laws forbid non-Jews to live in Jerusalem. I've gone over that. Jews want to secure the Suez for Europeans, but instead for the Jews. The Israelis are using the military of the United States to take over the territory of Greater Israel, which they know will eventually pass into their hands. Or the Jews could take Palestine, even Greater Israel. Okay, so let's look at what I had to say about Damascus real quick, and then I want to hit my other book that I published essentially in 2006, The Jewish Genocide of Armenian Christians. There were a lot of events that happened in Damascus, which are pertinent to this discussion. There was Father Thomas who was ritually sacrificed in Damascus. They found the perpetrators. The perpetrators confessed. It caused resentment against the Jews. I think it was 1841. It's called the Damascus Affair. It's one of the many reasons going back to the Isaiah prophecy of the woe of Damascus in Isaiah 17:1, where they view Damascus as being the potential supplier of the enemy of the Messiah. Again, Antiochus Epiphanes IV is the first of what the Jewish version of the Antichrist, this world figure who will rise and oppose the rise of Messiah, son of David, and oppose the wars of Messiah, son of Joseph. So they believe they are preempting that. They are striking first by attacking Damascus and destroying Damascus so that the enemy cannot emerge from Damascus who will challenge their Messiah. And they have repeatedly helped others to kill Christians. In the Middle East, they helped the Persians, opened up the gates to Jerusalem to the Persians to help slaughter the Christians there who were good to the Jews. This has been an ongoing process. During the Armenian Genocide, they would point out who were Armenians, and they would rebuff the idea that they should offer any support to the Armenians, whom they designated Amalekites to be exterminated, despite the fact that the Armenians had helped to protect Jews from Muslim and Kurdish attacks. In Syria, the Jews are in a state of, I'm quoting from an article from 1845. Again, my research in this book is massive. In Syria, the Jews are in a state of real servitude, and no change of masters has bettered their condition. Mohammedans and Christians alike hate and maltreat them, and this hatred is heartily returned, as the latter find whenever any circumstance gives their enemies a temporary advantage. When the Turkish succeeded the Egyptian troops in Damascus, a few years ago, they were stirred up by the Jews to persecute the Christians of every sect. When the Greeks rose against the Turks in 1822, the Jews eagerly joined against the Christians, especially in Constantinople, while the Greeks, in revenge, murdered all the Jews on whom they could lay their hands. And then I went on to talk about the Derme crypto-Jews, the Turkish Empire, and Palestine, and how the Jewish bankers and others, the Derme Turks, set up the Armenian Genocide. And then later in the year, I published a whole book on it, the Jewish Genocide of Armenian Christians. And then the following year, I gave a conference in Glendale, California, trying to warn the Armenians that they were going to lose more and more territory if they didn't pursue peace, but they may well have lost it anyway. This is a reference to that Damascus affair I was talking about, where Father Thomas was ritually murdered. This is, again, that citation about Antiochus IV Epiphanes in Isaiah 17:1, the woe of Damascus, the burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The Damascus affair was 1840, links up with the widespread reaction of the revolution of 1948, when they tried to take over all of Europe, the Matara affair of Italy, etc., etc. This is one of the Jewish apocalypses, which I quoted repeatedly and in full in other portions of my book, The Manufacture and Sale of St. Einstein. It's Avkat Rochel. It was in this, the version that Buxtorf used was from the 1516 Constantinople, Istanbul edition. Johannes Buxtorf translated it into German, and then his German volume of, Judenschule, the Jewish synagogue, was translated into English, and I came across that on microfilm, and this very important prophecy about the destruction of the Edomites, to wit, the Romans, and I explained that Edom represents Rome, to bear rule over the whole world, as America has done, together with Great Britain, and one of whose emperors shall reign over the whole earth for 9 months, as Biden has reigned during the destruction of Gaza and the war with Iran, this 9-month Chevlei Mashiach, birth pangs of the Messiah, who shall bring many great kingdoms to desolation. And then the anger will flame up towards Israel. And then, as it is in America and across the world, then Messiah, son of Joseph, make great war against the king of Edom, or the Pope of Rome, and being conqueror shall kill a great part of his army. That's what they're doing through subversion. They're killing off America and Great Britain and cut the throat of the king of Edom, as they did to Biden by getting him to step down to get Trump elected. And the Democrats were a part of that, just as Russia is a part of what's going on in Syria, just as Assad is a part of what's going on in Syria, just as he walked away, as the president of Ukraine walked away and went to Moscow to set all this up. Make desolate the Roman monarchy, bring back some of the holy vessels to Jerusalem, which are treasured up in the house of Elenius. Moreover, the king of Egypt shall enter into league with Israel. This is prophesied in Daniel 11. And shall kill all the men inhabiting Jerusalem, Damascus, and Ascalon. That is an ancient city in Gaza that was part of Philistia. Palestinians are Philistines. It's the same word. Which thing once noised over the whole earth, a horror, dread, and astonishment shall overwhelm the inhabitants of. Now, this is a series of 10 miracles bringing about the complete destruction of all Gentile peoples, which is being set up to happen in the Battle of Gog and Magog. Again, we are transitioning from the war of the Sefer Zerubbabel between Messiah, son of Joseph, and Iran to the full-on battle against all of humanity in the Battle of Gog and Magog. And that's why things are really getting hot and dangerous, even if it takes decades, and I don't think it will. That's not relevant. The Damascus affair. Father Thomas, a Christian priest, greatly beloved by the people, was treacherously murdered in the house of an opulent Jew named Duat Harari. The affair created much excitement in Europe. There was a big backlash against the Jews. The Alliance Israelite Universelle was founded out of this. B'nai B'rith came out of this, and the Dreyfus Affair in France. This was kind of like a precursor to the Dreyfus Affair in many ways, and to the Jewish reaction and establishment of international bodies supposedly to combat Gentiles, which end up tyrannizing Gentiles and preventing an open, honest discussion that can prevent war and bloodshed. Okay, so let's move over to my book, Forbidden History of the Armenian Genocide, and once again search for Damascus. When the Turkish succeeded the Egyptian troops in Damascus a few years ago, they were stirred up by the Jews to persecute Christians of every sect. Again, that was not unprecedented. Jesus himself talked about how the Jews were persecuting Christians. Justin Martyr talked about it. We all know what happened with Nero and his crypto-Jewish wife, Poppaea. Ben Justin Martyr alleged that the Jews sought to murdered, and defend Christians from the very beginning of the Christian movement. I give many citations of Jewish persecution of Christians and the murder of Jesus and of Christians. Jews persecuted the early church and stoned Stephen with the consent of Pharisee Saul, who became Paul. Obtained arrest warrants for the Christians of Damascus, who later Saul became Paul. That was the first march to Damascus was by Saul. Jewish religious literature, including the Talmud and numerous Kabbalistic works, call for the extermination of all Christians, and I gave a long note citing all those. This book is very thoroughly referenced and much plagiarized. There is nothing antecedently improbable in the idea that the Jews should have helped Muslims to oppress or slaughter Christian competitors, ergo the participation of the Jews of Damascus in the massacre of 1861 and the marking of Armenian houses at the time of the Constantinople massacres of 1896 by the Jews of Haskeuy, many of whom helped the Kurds, Turks, etc. to loot. So again, I was talking about all of this back in 2006 and how the Jews set up the Armenians to be exterminated. Is Dr. Gaster aware a number of Jews were executed for complicity in the Damascus massacres of 1860, and that many of the Jews of the Haskeuy quarter marked Armenian houses during the Constantinople massacres of 1896, and took part in the looting of some Armenian quarters. I said the Jews want to destroy Syria and especially Damascus because they believe that Arminius, the leader of the prophesied mass attack against them, as foretold in the myth of Sefer Zerubbabel, the wars of King Messiah, and the writings of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Arminius will rise in Damascus as heirs to the Jews' enemy Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who forced the Jews to sacrifice pigs in the Jewish temple to pagan gods and who oppressed Judaism. The Syrians and Iranians have paid a dear price for these racist and genocidal Jewish myths. The Jews will attempt to exterminate them just as they sought to exterminate the Armenians. I warned you, I told you, I expressly and in great detail gave you the evidence, the proof of what was to come and now has partially passed and is an ongoing process leading to our ultimate extermination. With these facts in hand, why isn't humanity able to bring this to an end? You need to help me get my voice out, or I'm not going to do this anymore. This has been tremendously costly to me. Now I need your help to continue to do this. You can do so at my website, cjbbooks.com. You can do so by reposting my stuff, by leading people to my stuff, and by exposing those worthless people who rip off my work and put it to evil purposes. I created all this knowledge. I put this out there. I told you what was coming. I pleaded with you to help. We still have a small chance, if not of stopping this, of at least preserving some remnant of ourselves to continue on. And I have a book about that forthcoming, as I've said. Let me read that again. The Jews want to destroy Syria and especially Damascus because they believe that Arminius, the leader of the prophesied mass attack against them, as foretold in the myth of the Sefer Zerubbabel, the wars of King Messiah, and the writings, it's the prayer of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Arminius will rise in Damascus as heir to the Jews' ancient enemy, Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who forced the Jews to sacrifice pigs in the Jewish temple to pagan gods and who suppressed Judaism. And now we have the Turks with their Pan-Turkic armies, with their Uyghur Mujahideen has taken over Syria, and things are going to, you have no idea what's coming, and I don't know if it's worthwhile telling you or not. I'll see if I get any support. Let me teach you about some of that Pan-Turkic stuff that's so important to understanding this next phase that we're entering into of Gog and Magog. Again, we are wrapping up the Chevlei Mashiach, the birth pangs of the Messiah. I think that's ending when Trump takes office. Then we go into the destruction of NATO, the subversion of NATO, and the battle of Gog and Magog between the Leviathan of the European West and the Behemoth of the Eurasianist forces. And they're gonna need that bread dough of the Eurasianists with this fake stuff going on between Pan-Turkey, the Uyghurs, and China, with all this Middle Eastern slimy subversion, all the governments of the Middle East helping Israel to fulfill these plans, the Russians and Americans helping Israel to fulfill these plans. And The Russians play a tremendous role in this formation of the Behemoth power, but the real heart of it is China. And China, Russia, and North Korea with their nuclear weapons, it could get real ugly real fast, and it could wipe us all out. And I've been telling you over and over again for 20, 30 years exactly what's coming and exactly how this is going to proceed. So I'm telling you, my model works. And this is what the model predicts next. This is what the prophecies say. No one else in the world has pointed out the fact that this is now the transition from the battle against Iran in terms of Chevlei Mashiach to the battle of Iran and the Behemoth and the Eurasianists as Gog and Magog against the west of the Leviathan. This is when it gets real ugly, and there's no going back once some of these things happen. If we don't do anything to preserve at least a small remnant of ourselves, our DNA is gone forever. So in 2006, and then in 2007, when the Armenian community reached out to me to hold a conference and to explain all this stuff, I started to teach them about the Pan-Turkic and Pan-Turkic movement, and they had no idea what I was talking about. At that time, most people in the world didn't know what the term Zionism meant, and there were very few results that would pop up on the search engines when you would put in the keyword Zionism. I and many others exposed what it meant, and I broke it down and explained it in the exact terms of racial Zionism, political Zionism, religious Zionism, it's revisionist Zionism, cultural Zionism, historical Zionism, et cetera, that no one in the community in which I was working had any clue what I was talking about. The Times History of the War, 1918, the author of the standard exposition of Pan-Turkic movement, who called himself by the pure Turkic name of Taken Alp, is believed to have been a Salonika Jew. Those are the Dern May, the crypto Jews mostly, a lot of them Freemasons, and they became the leadership of the Young Turks and deliberately brought about the genocide of the Armenian Amalekites. And there is also reason that's ongoing. Another one of the things that I vehemently tried to convince the Armenians of. At the time, Armenians were strong. They kicked Azerbaijan's ass with the help of the KGB, but they didn't realize that was all a setup for what happened recently when Azerbaijan took over Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, and started to move all over Armenia and seriously threatened Sihanouk in the lowest province of Armenia, adjacent to Iran, that separates Armenia and Turkey, and threatened to make it the Zangezur corridor and cut off Armenia from Iran and completely landlock it. It's already completely landlocked, but completely isolate Armenia and put it under the control of Pan-Turkic and probably exterminate them all and take over the whole territory. And they didn't know anything about this, and they didn't know anything about the fact that Armenians are considered to be the Amalekites. And I pointed out to them in the Josephine Chronicles, in the Pseudo-Josephus, they were called the Amalekites, and that the Jewish Encyclopedia said that, and the Encyclopedia Judaica pointed out that the Josephine Chronicles had conflated the Armenians with the Amalekites, and that this belief has been persistent, and that the Jews believe they are commanded to exterminate the Armenians completely, and that they have to do this pursuant to Sanhedrin in the Talmud Folio 20b. Now that they have taken Palestine, they are absolutely obliged to exterminate the Armenians, the Palestinians, the European peoples, in order to build the temple and to have their king rule the world. So We are slated to be completely exterminated. All our property completely destroyed. All our offspring destroyed. Our DNA obliterated from existence. Our memory blotted out so that it is as if we had never existed. Please take that to heart. Had been a Salonika Jew, and there is also reason to suppose that the secularizing anti-Islamic tendency, which is so remarkable a feature of Pan-Turkianism, was partly the effect of this Jewish influence, and that passed on to Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, descendant of Shabbatai Tsevi, Dernmay, crypto-Jewish Freemason, young Turk, who tried to hide all that, became the leader of the Turkish nation, pushing this pan-Turkism, this secularization, the destruction of the Turkish Caliph, the secularization of the nation of Turkey, the reduction of Turkey's borders, specifically to Turkey, but planning to create this crypto-Jewish Pan-Turian movement that would then extend from Hungary to the Uyghurs of China and up to Finland. And that was all to set up. That was all done to eventually set up the creation, the formation of the Behemoth out of the Russian Empire, the Pan-Turkic Empire, and the Chinese Empire that would be together such a strong force that it would destroy America and Europe and the West, the Leviathan, the Behemoth forces. This was engineered over the course of centuries. And the Gaon of Vilna set forth the plan that they are following now. And he talked about the destruction of the Ottoman Empire as preceding the rise of the Messiah. And he said that the Battle of Gog and Magog would last for 3 hours. The only way it can last for 3 hours is if it's a nuclear war. And he said that in the 1790s, I believe. The Pan-Turian, and this is what I wrote, the Pan-Turian and Pan-Turkic movement, which is often attributed to the crypto-Jews Munis Tekenalp, born Moitz Cohen, was earlier initiated by the Hungarian crypto-Jew British spy, Herzlian, Zionist, and Rothschild agent Arminius van Berry, born Hermann Bamberger. This movement, this gray wolf movement of these Turks, is to bring about the fulfillment of the quest of the Khazars from 2,000 years ago to slaughter all the Armenians and steal their territory, and to take, and has since evolved into taking over the Muslim movement, even though they were initially anti-Islamic to make Turkey into a secular force. And the reason they were originally anti-Islamic to destroy the Caliph was so that when the Jews took Palestine, there would be no united Muslim Ummah community to oppose the Jews forming a Jewish state of Israel, and to keep them from building the temple, the third temple, destroying the Al-Aqsa Mosque, destroying the Dome of the Rock, and anointing their Messiah, whom the Muslims will review as El-Dajjal, ruling the world. So what they did was they tricked the Turks into saying, hey, let's form our own nation, be super proud of being Turkish, give up the entire Turkish empire, shun it, abandon it, hand the Armenians over to the Bolshevik Russians, and get rid of Islam, become secular, follow Mustafa Kemal, descendant of Shabbatai Tsevi, call him Ataturk, the father of the Turks, this homosexual pedophile, crypto-Jew, Dernmay Freemason, deny that he was a Freemason, ignore his involvement in the Young Turks and form this new modern nation, and make it anti-Islamic so that when the Jews take over Palestine, there'll be no united Muslim opposition to it, and then they can do whatever they want to. That's why it was then secular. Today, Erdogan has started getting Muslim women to wear scarves over their heads, as the ancient Greeks did. And they did it to keep their hair clean so they wouldn't have to wash it every day. And the Muslims do it to be modest. I don't see anything wrong with it. Nuns do it. Catholic nuns do it. At any rate, they are now trying to make it all hyper-Muslim so that they can generate this war of the Sunni. The Turks are Sunni against the Shia Iranians and the Shia in Syria and the Shia of Hezbollah. So that's why they once again made Turkey hyper-Muslim, so that these gray wolves, these Sunnis, would help them to cause this transition. First, they had to have the Shiite be the caliphate and lead the Muslims against Israel so that they could stage this war between Messiah, son of Joseph, and Persia. And now they have to transition that into Erdogan, replacing Persia, and then seizing Persia and utilizing all of the forces of the Behemoth of Gog and Magog to come against Israel in this stage battle and come against the Amalekites of America and Great Britain, the Leviathan, the shell that protects Israel, and smash it. And then when America and Britain are smashed, when the Amalekite Calipat, the shell, the husk that protects Israel, is removed, the fruit will be ripe, and the Israelis will shine in the sun, in the moon, actually, in the darkness. And then the Muslims get hit and completely eliminated. Or they can engineer it so that we kill one another off, and then they will feast on our corpses. And that has been their plan all along since they fabricated the book of Job and the Leviathan of Christ, the fishhook, and the behemoth ox that became Ishmael and Islam. But that is why we have this transition from secularization back into being the leaders of the Sunni against the Shia. The Pan-Turian and Pan-Turkic movement, which is often attributed to the crypto-Jew Munis Telkenalp, born Moitz Cohen, was earlier initiated by the Hungarian crypto-Jew British spy, Herzlian Zionist and Rothschild agent Arminius von Berry, born Hermann Bamberger. Von Berry invented Pan-Turkism with the intention of generating a war between the Ottoman Empire and Russia so as to free up Palestine for the Zionists and free up Russian Jews for emigration to Palestine. The international Jewish bankers, most especially the Rothschilds through Disraeli and other agents, were constantly manufacturing wars at the time between Russia and Turkey for the same reasons. Van Berry appeared in the East sometime between the Rothschild-instigated Crimean War and the Rothschild-manufactured Russo-Turk Wars. There were a series of them, which produced the Treaty of Berlin that ultimately spelled the doom of the Armenians. The Pan-Turkic movement continues to be a means by which to generate conflicts between Turkey, Azerbaijan, Armenia, China, Russia, Uyghurs, and the many Turkic nations which were incorporated into the Soviet Union. The Uyghurs are identified by Pan-Turkish proponents as members of the community. Erkin Alptekin published Uyghur Turkleri in 1978, which criticized the Soviets for communist Chinese, for their mistreatment of the Uyghurs. More recently, Turkey fought a Pan-Turkic proxy war against Armenia by supplying Azerbaijan with highly effective drones and other armaments. And KGB engineered conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, Hungarian nationalist movement, Jobbik. Again, I've been talking about all these things for 20 years and nobody helped, nobody would listen. But people would rip off my work and put it to evil purposes. Moitz Cohen, aka Munis Telkenalp. And again, this Pan-Turkic movement is setting up to be one of the major elements in World War III. Studied to become a rabbi in the Alliance Israélite Universelle, school in Salonika. In addition to being a Pan-Turkist, he was also a Kemalist. He called for the Turkification of minorities in Turkey, despite being himself a crypto-Jew. Together with the Jews Marcel Franco and Henri Soriano, Cohen established the Turkish Cultural Association. This all had the effect of further alienating the Armenian community within Turkey. So I think I covered what I wanted to cover today. There's a lot more that's going on that I can explain that no one else in the world can. If I get a positive response to this for a change and people start to actually help instead of just taking advantage of my good nature, of stealing my work, of smearing me and spreading lies about me, and taking advantage of the fact that I put this stuff out for free at my own expense and spent my fortune trying to save you all from this, told you exactly what the hell was coming, begged and pleaded with you to help me do something to stop it. You can now see that. You can see all the interviews I posted on Twitter and my social media in 2006. I called it. I nailed it. I told you precisely what was coming, and it's happening. And you, if only you knew what they had planned next. I haven't even begun to expose all of that, and may never will. But I do definitely want to thank the people who wrote to me and convinced me to make this this video to help once again repeat the things I've been saying for 30 years, to try to convince people that we are in mortal danger. Look at how tremendously powerful these people are. They were able, at the drop of a hat, to take over Syria. And they had the United States completely under their control. They had Syria completely under their control. They had Turkey under their control, and they had Russia under their control. And they could make them all, and Iran, they could make them all just fold. Assad just folded right up, exactly like what happened in Ukraine, put up no resistance at all, and just walked away to Moscow. Same way President of Ukraine just folded and walked away, right away to Moscow, to set up this prolonged 10-year war that Putin set up when he took over Crimea, and Obama let him have it without a fight. And he could have shut him down economically. Instead, Obama let him build up his war chest so that he could invade Ukraine and mass murder the Ukrainians and set the world on edge and threaten us all with nuclear war every day. Stop cheerleading for that son of a bitch. He's trying to kill you. He's a Chabad Lubavitcher. He's a Chabadnik. He's got a rabbi. He did the wall thing with his kippah. This guy's your enemy. He wants you dead. He wants all of us dead. He is your enemy. We have our own internal enemies. We have the Trojan horse and the fifth column the same way the Russians do. Instead of just sitting on our asses whining about it, we have to act like adults and start to organize and do something about it. And if we can't convince masses of morons, we have to establish a community, a remnant to survive this and to preserve something of our DNA so that there are future generations of us, and so that we do not become extinct and disappear from the surface of the earth, as have so many of the peoples that this enemy has attacked in the past. I again want to thank my friends, two of my friends especially, who stepped up to give me the chance to do this. I'm a little under the weather. I've been suffering for 2 months from a bad cold, and it's starting to break, I hope. And I want to thank you all for listening. I am angry and I'm pissed off that I put all this effort in for 30 years, and very few people show their appreciation of it. Very few people try to help, and we're going to lose humanity as a result. It's coming down. It's going down. I called it exactly, and I know exactly what they have planned. It won't necessarily happen, but if we don't do anything to stop them, it sure as hell is going to happen. So thank you for watching. And if there's a positive response, I'll see you all next time. If not, I wish you all well, and I hope I'm wrong.